Alright, so today we're talking about why does the Habsburg Empire become a dual monarchy. So you might be curious to know why all of a sudden the Austrian Empire becomes the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and today we're going to talk about why that all happens. So the first question is, how was the Habsburg Empire affected by the Revolution of 1848? So the response of the government was to become more absolutist and kind of be more conservative and more kind of restrictive of the people. And you could see this is the various different nationalities of Austria, Austria-Hungary. You could see just how ethnically diverse the whole region is. Now, 1/6 of Germans were left out of a united Germany because they're living in either Austria or Bohemia and part of this Austrian Empire. A lot of the various different nationalities did not want to destroy the Austrian Empire, but they did insist on certain rights. They wanted self-government, they wanted their own schools and law courts, and they wanted administration in their own language. So they were willing to be a part of the empire, they just wanted greater autonomy. Now the Habsburg leader, Francis Joseph, he's going to rule from 1848 to 1916, and he pretty much disliked everything liberal, progressive, or modern. And he had allied himself with the Catholic hierarchy and with the Vatican, and he wanted to govern the empire through the German language, but he did favor material progress, but he wanted a military and bureaucratic government dominated by Germans. He did try to bring the empire together more economically by abolishing all internal tariffs, but he gave the Roman Catholic Church control over education, and national groups were not rewarded for their loyalty. For those who had been loyal to the Habsburg Emperor, they didn't get anything for it. The Crimean War left them without Russia's help with controlling Hungary. They were losing Italy, and a lot of people were saying, like, there needs to be a new system here. This can't go on. This is one of the last great empires of Europe. It was composed of families of the holdings of the Habsburg Empire. The aristocratic ceremonial of its court was famous. The late 19th century painting here shows a ball at the Vienna Hofburg, the town palace of the Habsburg emperors. Emperor Francis Joseph appears at the left of center holding his plumed hat and greeting a lady. This is the palace where that was actually occurring. There's also another shot of the palace, the picture that I took when I was in Vienna. So the second question is how the Compromise of 1867 tried to fix Austria's problems. So the Habsburgs decided to reorganize the country because the Magyars or the Hungarians were just putting too much pressure. If Germans dominated everything, and if everything was supposed to be in German, and they had all the power, the Magyars refused to participate. So they made what's called the Ausgleich, and I'm probably hardly mispronouncing that word, but I'll spell it for you, Ausgleich, and this was a bargain between the Germans of Austria and the Magyars of Hungary, but it was at a disadvantage to the Slavs. The Slavs were seen as incapable of civilization without help. Apparently they've always had a bad rap throughout history. But this compromise, this bargain between the Germans and the Magyars create a dual monarchy. They completely leave out the Slavs, but they create a dual monarchy. So west of the Lech River was the Empire of Austria, and to the east was the Kingdom of Hungary. There would be delegates of two parliaments would meet alternately in Vienna and Budapest. They would have a common ministry for finance, for foreign affairs, and war. Both sides would be elected to the ministry. The Germans and the Magyars, less than half of their kingdoms were, so the German side, the Austrian side, less than half of the people there were German. On the Hungarian side, less than half of the people were Hungarian or Magyar, and the other nationalities were not happy with this at all. Neither side was democratic. Landlordism was the basic social issue because people basically still were under the power of the large landlords. The landlords were educated and civilized, and the peasants were ignorant and pretty much left out of their whole civilization. So that takes us to this question, the third question. Why was there unrest amongst the nationalities within the empire? So the other nationalities wanted the same agreement that the Magyars won. They wanted to be able to govern themselves. So many groups opposed the Compromise of 1867 and didn't see this as fair. The most vocal of these groups were the Czechs. The Czechs, or the Bohemians, they favored a policy of a triple monarchy. And in 1871, it actually looked like Francis Joseph was willing to accept this. But the Magyars, surprisingly, even though they were the ones that had pushed for the dual monarchy, the Magyars were not willing to accept this. They did not want to make similar concessions to the minorities in their side of the empire. So for 20 years, the Czechs basically were placated with good posts in the bureaucracy on the Austrian side. But by the 1890s, Czech nationalism was growing much stronger. In 1897, Francis Joseph decides to give the Czechs and Germans equality of language. But the Germans opposed these measures and they disrupted the whole parliament. This obstructionism paralyzed the parliament, and Francis Joseph basically starts ruling the empire by decree. And the unrest of the nationalities caused political instability for Central and Eastern Europe. And we start to see the calls for the formation of nation-states with people outside of Austria's borders, and the Slavs begin to look to Russia for guidance. And this is really starting to set the stage for the Pan-Slavic movement, which is going to lead to World War I, because now we're kind of coming full circle, because we're talking about the late 1800s. And of course, we're now in then the build-up to World War I. So here we can see various different plots against the emperor, saying that they would gladly die if they could just restore the rights to the country. So kind of like some of the negotiations that were going on during this time period. This painting here is one of the best of its kind. It represents the helpless child King Laszlo V, his deceitful uncle, overpowering his young charge with wine, food, gesture, music, and dance, all the while the king mechanically signs the decrees and death sentences, kind of showing like the tyranny that the people were kind of forced to live under. But do you think that Austria-Hungary's problems have been solved by the creation of this dual monarchy? So think about that, and think about how all of this in the end is going to lead up to World War I.